Hello, and welcome to our last episode of the year of Technically Speaking. I have with me today Danny Pancratz, one of my favorite people at Unqork because he's the one that gets us all together. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dara. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I'm the director of our community at Unqork, which means I'm in charge of all things Community Hub, which hopefully those of you who are Unqork creators are very familiar with, as well as community events like our hackathons, our monthly success hours, and other programs like that.
Great. And for this episode, if you've seen the previous ones, you know I love asking questions. So Danny and I are going to ask each other a few questions to help us reflect on the year. And then we'll run through a couple of fun statistics of what happened. So, what, Danny, is something that you learned this year?
I've learned a lot about APIs. In my role, I'm not super technical, which is, fitting, since we're talking about, no code development and codeless development. And a lot of people of different backgrounds have become creators and got certified in configuration. I actually have an arts background, but I've been doing user group community stuff for tech companies for over a decade now. But when you do community stuff, you become an expert kind of like as a high level generalist in terms of terms and topics, but you don't always get the hands on, definitely not coding in my experience. And, one of my favorite things about working at Unqork was, my initial boot camp and training and learning like how even me as very much more of a business user could build some things. But, I'm not hands on in Unqork all the time. And APIs, I've made a LinkedIn post, I think a month or two ago, were this big, scary thing for me because I understood the acronym at a high level. I used to always talk to my IT director about it and like our business system team who supports a lot of the community stuff we do, would mention APIs. But that was the part of my Unqork training that like I kind of understood what was happening. I kind of didn't. And I loved that episode of Technically Speaking you did, I think about a month or so ago with Kyle, where you talked about APIs. That really helped me understood this thing that, I had been talking about, but not really understanding. And I have also gotten hands-on really in the last 2 months with APIs, setting up some automations, building some things on Unqork. And so now they're not scary. Now I can, I'm just skilled enough to be dangerous when I'm looking at API documentation and coming up with ideas. And that skill has really unlocked a ton of opportunity for me to build improvements for our community hub, for processes and things like that. And now I feel like I have all of these other things that I can explore next year. So that's the thing I'm most proud of learning this year. What about you, Dara? What's one thing that you've learned this year?
I spent a good chunk of time this year working with our product managers at Unqork as they're releasing new features, as they're talking to us about new features. I've really got a great look into how they plan things, how they think about the data analytics, how they're thinking about moving the Unqork platform forward and what that might mean for those of us that develop in it. So, really spending a lot of time with them and learning what product management and product development looks like from the other side. Because while I've been here for 4 years, I've always been focused on the clients and what we can build for them, how we get them what they need, how we build better development teams for the clients, and
Mhm.
less time focusing on how the platform team works and what each of the different roles amongst their team are doing and how they interact. So it's been a really great experience to get to work with some of our product managers and go through that process of releasing a feature.
Yeah, I love that. I took a product strategy course a couple of years ago, and I like to do a lot of my community management through like a product management mindset, right? Because our online community is this, digital online platform, right? And product management has so many best practices and like solid principles that really ground your work, right? And so I have to imagine that's been helpful for you, like managing and building products for our clients and things like that. That's awesome.
What what was your favorite new community hub feature now that we're talking about new features being rolled out?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned in that product strategy course is that good products are about solving problems for people, making things easier. And we had a problem on our community hub in that people couldn't, check how many points they had earned month to date, or the previous month, or the one before that, or any real, ad hoc time frame that they might be interested in. And that was a problem because we have this great SME program that requires you to earn a certain amount of points, over 200 points for 3 consecutive months, and also, answer a certain number of questions and things like that. And so a lot of people were trying to kind of benchmark themselves and track their progress, but there wasn't an easy way to do that with the way our community leaderboard was set up, which was either, the current week or all time. And learning all that stuff about APIs that I told you, I finally figured out, oh, hey, I can build an app for that. I was testing out some things for our novice configurator badge from our enablement team. And the use case for that novice configurator exam, I was like, oh, this is exactly the same as if I wanted to build a simple app for somebody to check their points, or it's pretty similar. So, built a very short form, what's your email address, what time frame are you looking for, and then, remote executed an API call, and it found that user, it grabbed their points between the start date and end date, and now people can check that whenever. We went live with that just about a month ago right now. I kind of soft launched it and just announced it about a week ago. And we've had well over 100 uses of it pretty quickly. And that was earlier this week. I haven't checked in a while. And all of that I did with Unqork, which is great. So it's very nice to be able to solve our own problems quickly. Like I said earlier, I'm not really building an Unqork that much, so that I could figure that out in less than a day's work, and get so much value from it, because those 100+ checks of people's points all used to be emails or messages to me, right? And then I had to open up a couple tabs, find that person, select the dates. So the time saving already is more than the time that I put into it. And again, we're talking novice configurator stuff. And then another thing that I think is really cool that's kind of tied is we built this community contributor portal, again, something on Unqork. And it's a way for people to say, like, these are the ways I'm interested. I'm interested in joining Dara on Twitch, or I'm interested in presenting on Success Hour, or, interview me for the Power User Spotlights, or things like that. And, normally I would have to go ask somebody. So trying to kind of reverse that and show people, like, these are all the areas where you can contribute. You can earn badges and points and showcase your expertise. And my intern this summer actually built that, right? And here's, again, somebody with no coding experience whatsoever, only just kind of went through basic boot camp stuff, and then over the course of his internship built a pretty robust app on Unqork for, managing the interest in that, a dashboard for tracking those that we kind of use and convert, and some ways to automate awarding the badges and points for that as well, which is super cool. What about you, Dara? You are one of our top users of the Community Hub all time. In SME, I think you're in the top 2 or 3 on our leaderboard. Maybe number 1. I haven't checked in a while. I'll check that quickly. But what's your favorite feature that we've added to the Community Hub over the last couple months?
I think in this year, probably selfishly, my favorite feature is the best practices forum. This was something that you and I had slacked about, and that there really is a lot of Unqork knowledge that the people that work here have that we want to share out. And we didn't have a good way to write and revise and continually update best practices as new features came out, as somebody figured out a new way to do something, as we had discussions about things. There may be something that we believed was a best practice, and somebody comes forward with another idea, and we want to talk about it. We want to understand when it's the right way to do something in way X versus Y. So having a place where not only can we publish and put things out there, but also have those discussions about best
Mm-hmm.
practices brings all of us forward. So not only the folks from our SI partners or clients moving forward and building better, but it also encourages our own employees to build better and to think about what type of conversations they can be having around best
Right.
practices, performance, security, all of those.
Yeah, and to be able to workshop them, like you said, right?
Absolutely.
We have plenty of great best practices documentation from our enablement team in our platform documentation, some academy courses on that. But we're learning things and developing things, like you said, so to have discussions about it, and then from my point of view too, is like the inbound. We don't know what we don't know, right? So we might think we have information out there. So a forum where not only can we publish and discuss and have a conversation, but people can say, what is the best practice for X, Y, and Z? Because if they weren't able to find it, then maybe that's a gap that we need to fill. So I'm a big fan of that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so
Um,
Dara, I have a question for you. What
sure.
was your favorite? You've been doing technically speaking, I now for I think 3 months. Kicked off in September on your fourth month here. What has been the favorite topic discussed on your show so far?
My favorite topic, I would say, is test driven development. I think it's something that we are all very excited to jump in and get writing code or developing an Unqork or creating an Excel sheet or a Word doc, that sometimes we forget that a little bit of planning saves us a lot of time and a lot of grief in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking about something that when I came to Unqork without tech background was incredibly hard for me to wrap my head around of don't just jump in and start dragging components. Take some time, write your tests, make sure you know exactly what the acceptance criteria is going to be. Make sure you're accounting for that and you're testing yourself. Um, that was a huge switch in how I worked. Um, so sharing that knowledge and getting to reinforce that with a platform where you can do so much and be so creative and so powerful, in order to get that power, you have to take a step back, think about the test, think about the baseline, and then move into kind of your development phase.
Yeah. Two quick thoughts on that.
Yes.
One, it reminds me of the favorite thing I learned from you at Unqork Create last year. So October of 2021, Dara did a presentation in our virtual Unqork Create and had some great advice for managing teams. And one of my main takeaways, what Dara recommended, was define what success looks like, right? And for person to person, interpersonal coaching with teams, that's fantastic advice. But what you just talked about with the planning and test driven development is you're doing that. You're taking that advice and putting the work in up front, right? I want to build an app or this piece of configuration and this functionality. What does success look like? And if you can't define a test, do you know what success looks like there? And the second thought is, the more I progress in my career, that piece of advice is so true everywhere, right? So I've learned about marketing and marketing automation, product development and product management. We talked about. Yeah, I do a lot of events and things like that. It seems to just always be that the more kind of thought and homework you do up front before you get into the exciting thing of developing your video or writing your email or building your app or like creating the agenda for your event, whatever it is, the more homework you do up front and kind of clearly define like your roadmap and what you're trying to accomplish, the better it is, because that work catches up to you at some point. And if it catches up to you late in the game, as you talked about on that episode, it's a lot harder to fix. But if you set up your test from the get-go, then the building is more fun. The execution is more fun because you're not running into unexpected problems.
Absolutely. I don't like surprises. With that, what was your most surprising hackathon presentation? I know that you've had multiple. hackathons this year. They've been great through community. They've been on Twitch with you, many of our
Mm-hmm.
winners. Um, so we often, when we put out those hackathon questions, sometimes expect a kind of response. Who
Yeah.
surprised you the most?
You know, we're always because we're serving financial services, insurance, kind of like the enterprise customers. So much of our Unqork apps are kind of business focused. So the more fun ones are outside of our core kind of customer base are the ones that surprise me the most. So the one that really pops to mind is just a really simple rock paper scissors game that I think was one of the finalists for our first hackathon. And it's similar to what Nick showed way back in May on an episode of the Uncoder, like the Don't Cork the Ice game that he built. That, we're going to talk about financial services and insurance and, government use cases all the time, but, you can do things for fun. And that's really the idea of the hackathons for me is we have people who are on large teams building large complex applications, and you serve your role, right? Maybe you're like a data workflow expert, or you're working on this piece of thing. And the nice thing about the hackathon is right now it's an individual thing, not a team project, and that's intentional so that you can explore different parts of the platform that you're not working on in your insurance business case, right, or use case, and to explore that new feature, to figure out that, to sharpen your skills, add new things, and also the opportunity to be creative. So the non-traditional use cases are the ones that surprise me. And a quick shout out on earlier this week, on Tuesday, our runner-up Shiv Kumar joined Nick and did a deep dive on his config like our past winners have. And that was a resort use case. And a really cool nugget that came out of the end of that conversation is Nick was like, how'd you come up with a resort booking app, right? Like a fully functional like web portal for booking resort and an admin thing. And he was like, we were booking a team outing, and I was in charge of like finding the place for us to go and what were we going to do at the location, and just realized, oh, I could build this same functionality on Unqork. And he said in less than 8 hours, he had this really robust, like complex app that was everything that he was using as an end user.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm always impressed with everything that comes out of those hackathons.
Yeah, next one is coming up soon. The sign-up period just passed. We're focusing on parallel execution. So, like I said, it's an opportunity for people to explore functionality that they might not have used. Parallel execution functionality is some of the newer stuff, some of the new workflow nodes and things like that. So it's giving people a reason to go figure this out, to go experiment with whether it's a fun game or a resort or whatever. And so I'm excited to next month see what kind of use cases come out of it. And then we'll share those on the community like we have as well. And then we'll showcase the finalists probably here on Twitch again. So I'm very excited for that as well. Dara, my next question for you is tough because you're inviting so many great colleagues on to talk to you. Who has been your favorite guest so far, if you had to pick just one? Other than me, of course.
It's going to take a little bit of an out there. I actually find that I enjoy being a guest sometimes. So spending time with the Uncoder earlier this year, talking about managing teams and how we do it was probably the most fun that I had, because I didn't have the pressure of having to come up with the questions. I just talked.
Yeah.
I would also say I had great conversations this year with members of my team, people that I work with, working with Kyle on APIs, Joe on UX design, Tony on troubleshooting, and Taslim last week on Tech Track. I think the one where I learned the most was talking to Joe. He also is always funny, always exciting to get on a show, and just kept you guessing the whole time.
Yeah, he's great to talk to. We were supposed to have like a 15-minute quick chat that on an idea a couple months ago, and pretty quickly it was like, oh, that's not actually something that we thought was an opportunity here. But then we just spent the rest of the time just chatting about baseball and getting to know each other and things like that, because he's such a pleasure to talk to.
And, we were talking about community and guests and our favorites. Who has been top contributors this year in community?
Well, you can always find that easily with who our subject matter experts are, because as I mentioned, it takes a lot, right? Month over month, high engagement and activity, answering questions and things like that. It shouldn't be a surprise for anyone who's been active on the community the last couple months that our top contributor this year looks like it's going to, we still got, a couple weeks left, but it looks like it's going to be Lakshmi Ragi from Deloitte, who's one of our SMEs. We about 4 or 5 months ago, Dara launched this new thing where we would give you, it's community leaderboard badges, right? So if you earn the most points this month, you get the gold badge and things like that. And since launching that, he has earned the top spot 3 times. And I think the last 3 months in a row, and finished second and third a couple times. Overall, when we design those badges, there's also a badge for having the most answers provided in a month. And the badge was like maxed out at like doing that 5 times. I thought that would last me a good year or two. He very quickly already has the most answers in a month, 5 different months over the last year or so. And also this past month broke 2 records for the most points earned and most answers provided that I thought were going to take a while to be broken. Had 25 answers last month alone, and I think over 1,200 points or something like that. It was a lot. So that's the individual. We also gave out at Unqork Create last month a couple company awards, one for one of our clients and one for one of our SI partners. Is Marsh from the client side has a lot of great contributors active on the community, not only asking questions, but providing answers and discussing those best practices, like you said. Chinoa has a ton of people who have really adopted the community and are helping out, but we're seeing it. We have great support on our community from all of our SI partners, Persistent, EY, KPMG, Chinoa, like I mentioned, Deloitte, and seeing some other partners as well. So it's really cool to see the adoption and the buy-in, and 90% of the replies and the answers provided on our community, Dara, come from people who aren't Unqork staff. There's real excitement and this real sense of helping each other out and shared success and sharing tips and tricks. That's my favorite part of what I do every day.
That's amazing. And as an SME, I know how difficult it is and how competitive those most points and most answers are. So amazing that the same person has gotten them 3-5 months in a row.
Yeah. You, I mentioned earlier, you're in the top 2 or 3. I confirmed all time. You're number 2. Our colleague Christopher is a couple thousand points ahead of you, but Lakshmi's really ramped up. He's now 5th overall all time, and so he's coming for your second place spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gunning for the top spot. Dara, what's your favorite piece of configuration that you worked on this year?
Probably in its usefulness, just like you were talking about, your interns worked with you to build an app. We also built an app with our interns this summer, and we built one to do some reviews, end of project reviews for our partners, for our SIs, for our own folks, so that as they move from project to project, they get feedback. They're able to grow. We're able to get that information back to the leadership of our SI partners and make sure that they know that maybe somebody needs some communication coaching or they're ready to take on the next level of configuration. We want to have those conversations. So it built both an intake as well as dashboards and portals and emails, and getting to work with them and really go back to that point of discovery in building in Unqork was really, really amazing. And getting to kind of help them as they left, take it to the next level and integrate with our internal systems, integrate with the actual SI partners and get them in there with their own dashboards. That's been a really, really wonderful experience this year. Um, it may not be our most complex configuration, but taking the step back and kind of looking at, hey, somebody who's been here only 2 to 3 weeks is already building a robust application that we can use and can help our business and help our partners to grow.
Right. Yeah, like you said, it might be a more simple use case, but I think it's a super valuable one. I've seen a number of different review functionalities in our hackathons, right? One was a manager to employee thing, somebody built a
Yeah.
book review application. And when we kind of talk about like what codeless architecture and no code apps and um, what we're doing here, like moving away from legacy and being able to adjust and like update and things like that. I think that use case of feedback and reviews is really powerful, right? There's plenty of out of the box software you can buy or license or whatever someplace else, but company to company, project to project, that unique relationship of like working with our partners and things like that, you're going to have custom requirements, and that you can adjust that for the needs of however to do that, I think is super valuable and still get that kind of core functionality, but then also custom dashboards off of that to share just with whomever is I think a really great use case and something people can get a lot of value from.
And to help those partners or internally for us to start to see trends. I think
Mm,
that's the most exciting part is we can now, instead of just saying, hey, all of our SI partners need to work on APIs, we can now see, is it different for each partner? Do they have different gaps that we can help them fill? Um, and really, internally as well, we'll be able to figure out, do we have gaps within our team?
yeah. I've heard a lot of presentations on what automation and as kind of technology levels up unlocks, and it's about moving human tasks to higher value work, right? And so I think that's one of the things about breaking away from legacy and you being able to do that. What you just described for me is like a higher quality conversation to help coach and improve people rather than like, well, how do I go kind of review all the code or figure all that out, right? It's a much simpler way for us to improve the work that we do, the work that we do for people, and ultimately the work everyone's doing for their clients.
How about you, Danny? What was your favorite piece of configuration you worked on this year?
That points app earlier, and like I said, super simple stuff, but good products and good features are about solving problems, making things easier than the alternative. And the proof point is if people use it, and it solved a huge problem for me, saved me a lot of time, and people seem to be using it so far, and no complaints. Although I'm open to feedback from everyone who's using it, especially people with more configuration expertise than I have, that and how we can improve that over time.
It's amazing. I'm really excited. And I've definitely used the Points app, so I'm appreciative that it's there.
Yeah.
All right, should we jump into our rapid fire stats?
Yep. I'll kick us off.
Okay.
You mentioned you thought of a lot of different names before you landed on technically speaking for this Twitch show. So, how many names did you ultimately brainstorm or almost go with?
There were 4 names, and I have to give a huge shout out to Natalie and Danya, who helped rethink and revitalize and come up with ideas. They are phenomenal, and they were the ones that came up with technically speaking. All right. How many SMEs did we have this year?
We added at least 20, I think maybe by the end of this month, going on 22 or 23, which brings us up to over 40 total. So we essentially doubled our SMEs this year, which is super exciting. And almost all of those, I think all except one, maybe two, came from external non-Unqork staff people. And as you well know, before I even joined, like, yes, the early SMEs were our team kind of building a knowledge base, and it's exciting to see the community take that knowledge base, sharpen their skills, and then kind of add to the knowledge base, which is super cool. That's what community is all about.
That's awesome. I'm going to go down as stats for Community Hub. What was our most tagged topic this year?
Data workflow, once again, has always been the top thing. But we saw a lot of questions, number 2, on our new grid system. A lot of questions about those as people explored those.
That's awesome. How many creators do we have in community?
So net new this year, over 1,200, I think really around 1,250 and counting. And active this year, over 2,200 who have been active on the community. So a lot of them are new and kind of learning this year, which is really exciting. And so, yeah, and that grows month over month, more active users. And what I'm most excited about, like I said, is more contributing users month over month, people asking questions, upvoting, things like that.
And how many questions were asked this year?
This one I thought was interesting. Over 2,200 and almost down to exactly one per person, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, you got SMEs not asking questions and providing more answers, but averages out to about one question per person this year.
And how many total posts did we have? So questions.
A lot more. Nearly 10,000 total posts. I think we'll break 10,000 by the end of the year. So having those conversations about the different ways you could solve that question, or really, like you discussed earlier, expanding beyond questions and talking about best practices, use cases, and other things.
Wonderful. And how many upvotes overall? That's another good indicator of engagement.
Yeah, and I love it. Seems simple, but when there's 3 or 4 different options on a question, seeing those upvotes from different SMEs, different people is really helpful, right? So nearly 15,000 upvotes so far this year.
That's amazing. That's really great engagement.
All right, so we're doing this on Twitch. You have your Twitch show. I thought for the last part of this stat segment, I would ask you if you know how many episodes of our various Twitch shows we've had. So we kind of have 3 in our portfolio. Let's start with yours. What episode number of Technically Speaking is this? Do you know?
This is number 8.
That is right. Now, we kicked off our Twitch stuff earlier this year with Nick Gamble, our chief evangelist, aka the Uncoder. How many episodes of the Uncoder have we done so far?
34.
That's right. And I think on Twitch, we've done 5 or 6 community things, but we've had webinars, we do our hackathons, we had a couple user group meetings this year. If you had to guess, how many community events have we done this year?
24.
Close, very, very close. 25, I think. If I might be counting this one, so you're either right on or off by one. And then add to that, if you plug through everyone, check out the community hub for the list of events, our live streams, community things, as well as training events that we do. And they've been doing a whole bunch of prep courses and things like that. So I think if you add it all up from an Unqork perspective, there's well over 100 different events we've done for our creators this year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we've definitely had a great year here on Twitch with the Uncoder community, Technically Speaking, and we want to thank all of you for being a part of it. And with that, we will see you in the new year on Technically Speaking and in our community events, and we can't wait for that.
Happy holidays.